Welcome to your Monday video. In this week's court cases, we will be discussing how you could legally marry whoever you want, how teachers can pray for you but cannot pray with you, and the least effective way to rob a jewelry store. First court case, Loving v. Virginia. It's a love story, my favorite. Mildred Jeter and Richard Lovings fell in love. And they loved each other so much that they up and got married. But in Virginia, that was illegal. You see, Mildred Jeter, who eventually became Mildred Lovings, was a black lady. And Richard Lovings was not a black lady. So he was a white man. And white people and black people could not get married in Virginia. They were arrested and sentenced to a long time in prison, or they could leave the state. So they left the state. A very long journey, all the way to Washington, D.C., across one state border. The Loving couple came back to visit friends and family, and they got arrested again. Wasn't very loving of Virginia. Yes, that was a dad joke. How can you tell I'm making dad jokes? Well, when it's apparent. This may not seem like a big deal today, but in 1958, this was a huge court case. The courts ruled that you could marry whoever you want, which was a landmark at the time. Many societies across history never gave that right. Also, this was during the Civil Rights Movement, which gave African Americans more rights that they deserved in the United States. Also, it gave rights to Mr. Richard, who was a white man, because apparently he thought Mildred was good looking, because he married her. If only Disney would have released Beauty and the Beast earlier, we never would have had these problems. I mean, it shows that true love goes deeper than just the skin. Or in that case, the fur. She still loved him even though he wasn't really her own species. And he kidnapped her. If Belle can find it in her heart to love that violent, gigantic, kidnapping bull, bear, lion, then we can love anyone. Next court case, Engel v. Vital. A. No, the E is not silent. In New York in 1962, students were highly encouraged to say a prayer every morning. Almighty God, we acknowledge our dependence upon Thee, and we beg Thy blessing upon us, our parents, our teachers, and our country. I read it that way because they're using 400-year-old language. Students can opt out on saying the prayer, but they had to have parents' permission to do so. 5 parents signed for their kids to not pray, and it didn't end very well. They received lots of prank phone calls and some death threats from the people who were pro-prayer from the area. How very Christian of them. Just a suggestion on how you should spread your faith. Don't threaten people's lives. And if you ever do start threatening people's lives, take a break. The courts had to dig very deep to find the outcome to this, all the way in the First Amendment. First Amendment says, Congress shall make no laws respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. The government cannot force you to worship a god, and they can also not force you to worship a god. The federal court decided that it was unconstitutional to force a student to pray in school. However, it is still constitutional to allow students to pray in school. Time for a silly example. I do not believe that you should wear socks and sandals at the same time. It's a paradox. It's self-defeating. You wear sandals to feel the breeze on your feet. You wear socks to not get blisters, but sandals are designed to not give you blisters. It's offensive. If it was up to me, I would outlaw it. However, Congress has made no law respecting the establishment of socks and sandals, or prohibited the free exercise thereof. So since it has made no law about it, you can wear socks and sandals. And since it has made no law against it, you don't have to wear socks and sandals, which is the preferred method. This is a very controversial court case due to the fact that most of society is religious, and a lot of the religious people happen to be Christian. They feel like as time goes on, more and more of their religious liberties are being taken away. But you as a student still have these 2 very important rights. If you are religious, you can still pray in school, and you can also spread your belief in school. And if you believe in a God who created the entire universe, then he is probably powerful enough to still spread your religion in school regardless of what laws they make. And also know that your teachers and your administrators are limited on how we can spread our faith with you, like we generally can't discuss religion. It doesn't mean that we don't pray for you at home. If you tell your teachers about your sick meemaw, we probably going to pray for your sick meemaw. So here's my encouragement to those who disagree with this law because they're worried about their faith not being spread at school. Well, spread your faith at school. Last court case, Terry v. Ohio. This is a court case about people allegedly trying to rob a jewelry store. It's also where we get the term stop and frisk from. And this was a few years after Mapp v. Ohio, which was the court case about the woman who refused to let the police officer enter her home and they still stopped and searched her home. I mean, what's going on in Ohio? All this stop and frisk. They're getting a little frisky over there. Now, was that a dad joke? Apparently. So police officer McFadden sees some gentlemen looking into a window of a store over and over again. And he thinks that's a bit suspicious. And he's a snaky police officer. He hides in a store and watches them. He then goes and asks them all their names when he tells them to stop. And then he frisks them and finds that they were all carrying weapons. And carrying concealed weapons in Ohio in 1968 was illegal. In the 1960s, it seems like everything was illegal in Ohio. And unlike Mapp v. Ohio and Terry v. Ohio, they ruled in favor of the police officer because what he did was legal. It is important to know that police officers' job is to be suspicious and ask questions. They can also legally, at any time, ask you to stop. All they need to ask you to stop is reasonable suspicion that something may be going wrong. Here's an example of how easy that is. 100% of crime committed is by human beings, and you are a human being. In this particular case, it was very suspicious that grown men kept looking into a window of a jewelry store over and over again. Now realize this is not necessarily to take away your freedom, it is for your protection. No one enjoys when a police officer stops them and asks them questions. However, we absolutely love when a police officer stops criminals and asks them questions. The next important part of this case is the word frisk. The police officer patted them down and realized that they had weapons on them. A police officer could not generally pat you down without probable cause, but it also is for their protection. While there are some who've had negative interactions with the police officers, it's important to know that we want police officers protected because if we had no police officers, this would be a very uncomfortable society. Or in other words, anarchy. A lot of people find this law uncomfortable, and even some say it is unconstitutional according to the Fourth Amendment. But here's my suggestion for you. Don't break the law. While I'm sure there are some innocent people in prison, I'm willing to bet that over 95% of them have one thing in common. They all broke the law. And know that police officers are human beings. Most of them are good people. Most of them want to get home to their family. Most of them still make mistakes. And they also deal with some pretty bad people during the day. So give them some grace because they can be at times a little grumpy. And with that being said, next year give your teachers some grace because they're dealing with freshmen all day. So at times, they can be a little bit grumpy. Keep up the good work.